Season of the Deep is here in Destiny 2. The cool thing with the artifact this time around is that we get some very interesting bonuses to our Arc subclasses that just make them even more devastating. And in the recent patch notes, we actually got some changes to some exotics that were a little lackluster. So in this video, I'm going to be reviving my point contact cannon brace Titan Arc build and show you why it's kind of disgusting now. So let's just dive right into it. Here is the exotic, the point contact cannon brace. That's what it looks like. It actually has a Scorn style ornament. I don't like that one as much, but the main thing we want to talk about is the perk, right? Hammer of the Gods. Defeating targets with your Thunderclap melee restores melee energy. Targets near you when you use your Thunderclap suffer lightning strikes that become jolted, and being amplified increases the damage of these lightning strikes. Now, like I mentioned, we want to take advantage of certain things on the artifact, so let's run through it. In the second column here, I have authorized mods Arc, Void, and Melee. Again, depending on what weapons you're using for Arc and Void, you could put these on. I'd recommend Arc because some Arc weapons can come with Jolt, and Jolt is just going to help out with the subclass here. Anyway, there's going to be other things that we could take advantage of as well, but the main one here is authorized mods Melee. Again, any of those armor mods that affect the melee are now significantly reduced. They're reduced to 1, so we can focus on other mods that do not have this benefit this season. Now, some other ones I look into that are specific to the Arc subclass would be, first up, Thunderous Retort. Gain bonus Arc super damage if cast while critically wounded or while amplified. Lasts until the end of the super activation. Pretty much, your Thunder Crash is going to do more damage. Everyone likes that, right? Next up, Amped Up. Gain damage resistance while amplified. Considering we're going to be amplified a lot of the time, this is just going to be a small bonus here. Then also Shock and Awe. Arc Final Blows. While you are amplified, summon a burst of lightning that damages and jolts targets. Again, like I said, we're going to be amplified a lot of the time. As long as there's ads around, this is just a bonus for ad control. And a lot more jolting as well, so absolutely disgusting. Next, let's go over what I'm using under the Arc Striker subclass. So for the super, we're going to be using Thunder Crash. Again, that is our just one-hit super ability. It's going to do a lot of damage. Next up, under our abilities, I'm going with Thruster for the class ability. If you did want to use the Barricade, you totally can. I just find that Thruster works out better with this build specifically. Again, it does have a 30-second cooldown versus Rally, which is 38, and Towering, which is 48. Not a huge deal if you want to use these. I just like Thruster for this build in particular, because you're going to get it back pretty quickly. Next up, Straight Flip for the movement ability. You can use whatever you want there. And then obviously for the melee, we're going to be using Thunderclap again. While grounded, to plant your feet and begin charging your fist with Arc Energy. And again, that is if you hold your melee button, and then once you release, it unleashes a devastating blast in front of you, dealing damage that increases with longer charge time. So if you just hold the melee, release it quickly, does the melee, but it's not as strong if you hold it down longer. Again, it's not going to be really insane depending on how long you hold it. With this build, you can literally just hold and release if you'd like to, but that's up to your discretion. Now for the grenade, it doesn't really matter. You can have a variety of options here, but I would recommend trying to match a grenade with our aspect here, Touch of Thunder. Touch of Thunder gives certain bonuses to grenades. In this case, Flashbang, Pulse, Lightning, and the Storm Grenade. Now, I do want to talk about the fragments before I talk about the grenade stuff, so let's go over the other aspect. Knockout. Critically wounding a target or breaking their shield infuses your melee attacks with Arc Energy and increases your melee range and damage for a short time. Defeating targets with melee attacks starts health regeneration and makes you amplified. This is how we're going to become amplified with the Thunderclap melee. Boom. Initially, again, we can become amplified getting rapid arc kills in general, but melee is going to be the best way to do that. Next up, let's talk about the fragments here. I have Spark Resistance as my first one here. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage, gives us a plus 10 to strength. Next, Sparkling Amplitude. Rapidly defeating targets while you are amplified creates an orb of power. Again, whether it's for you or your teammates, it's pretty much a free orb of power that can be generated while we're amplified, which we are going to be a lot of the time. Next up, Spark of Feedback. Taking melee damage briefly increases your outgoing melee damage, and that is a plus 10 to resilience. Again, we're going to be using our melee. We're going to be within melee range. If we get meleeed and then we release the Thunderclap, it's going to do even more damage. Now, for our last fragment slot, we have a couple of options here. So, like I said, this is going to tie into Touch of Thunder, but I like Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target creates an Ionic Trace. Again, jolting targets can stun overload champions, and Ionic Traces pretty much just give you ability energy and automatically track toward you. Now, obviously, our melee is going to jolt targets with, point contact cannon brace and all that great jazz. But in regards to our grenade, with the lightning grenade specifically, with Touch of Thunder, it grants an additional grenade charge. So now we get 2 lightning grenades and jolts targets hit by the initial blast. So that's a free jolt right there if they get defeated. Again, that's going to create our Ionic Trace, giving us ability energy. Another combination to look into would be Spark of Shock. Again, your Arc Grenades jolt targets, minus 10 to discipline. And I would tie this in with the Storm Grenade. And with the bonus from Touch of Thunder, again, the Storm Grenade, after detonating, creates a roaming thundercloud that tracks nearby targets and fires bolts of lightning at the foes beneath it. So it's pretty much a grenade that tracks targets, jolting them. Good for ad control. And the last combo I'd look into is having Spark of Magnitude. Again, your lingering arc grenades, lightning, pulse, and storm grenade have an extended duration. So all the grenades I mentioned, you can use this fragment instead of the ones that I mentioned with those grenades, but I'd recommend Spark of Magnitude with the pulse grenade because the bonus from Touch of Thunder creates ionic traces periodically as it damages targets and increases in damage over time. So you could throw it on a boss, does increased damage over time, and creates ionic traces that'll track toward you, giving you ability energy. Next, let's go over the armor mods that I'm using. So first up here on the helmet, I'm rocking double hands-on. Again, gain bonus super energy on melee kills. Gonna be utilizing the melee a lot, might as well. Now for this other slot, you can kind of put in what you want. I like Kinetic Siphon because of the exotic weapon that I'm gonna be using, but Rapid Kinetic Final Blows create an orb of power. If you did want to change this out, you know, you could go triple hands-on if you really wanted to, or replace one of those with Dynamo. Again, reduces super cooldown when using your class ability in your targets. Again, if you're using the thrust in your targets, you're getting even more super energy back. If you did want to go with, you know, special ammo finder, heavy ammo finder, something like that, you totally can, but the main thing here is having double hands-on. On our gauntlets here, I'm rocking melee kickstart. When your melee energy is fully expended, you gain melee energy. Additionally, your armor charge is consumed and you gain additional melee energy for each stack. If you don't know how armor charges work, essentially, if you pick up an orb of power, you will gain 1 armor charge. Minimum, you can have 3 armor charges. And again, with these yellow mods, whenever you have armor charges and we use our melee, or, you know, if you have grenade kickstart, use your grenade. Again, it'll consume those charges, giving energy to that ability. So keep that in mind. Next up, heavy-handed. Your powered melee final blows create orbs of power, then also focusing strike grants a class ability energy when you cause damage with a melee attack. On the chest piece here, the main thing to note is charged up. Again, increases the maximum number of stacks of armor charge you can carry by 1, so instead of 3, we now have 4. Now I am rocking melee damage resistance, so that will reduce the incoming damage that I'm taking at point blank range since we are taking advantage of the melee. Then I would recommend a reserve mod depending on what weapons you're using. On the boots here, I'm rocking stacks on stacks. Picking up an orb of power grants you 1 additional stack of armor charge, so instead of 1 orb of power equaling 1 armor charge, 1 orb of power now equals 2 armor charges. So if we want our max 4 armor charges, all we have to do is pick up 2 orbs of power. And then I'd highly recommend double invigoration, reduces melee cooldown each time you pick up an orb of power. And last on the class that I'm rocking double outreach, reduces melee cooldown when using your class ability, so when we use that thruster, we can get our Thunderclap back faster. And then also powerful attraction. This is a new mod that came with the season, but automatically collects nearby orbs of power when you activate your class ability. So when we use that thruster, all those orbs around us will come to us. So if we don't have any armor charges, and we pick up 2 orbs of power, we'll be able to have max armor charges, use our melee, and get that Thunderclap back even faster. Now for stats to focus on, honestly, the main one here, we talk about every video, resilience. Try to have tier 10 resilience, 100 resilience. It's going to give you a 30% damage reduction in PvE, and survivability is key in the PvE landscape. And then next up, I'd highly recommend strength. Again, strength is tied to the melee, and the more strength we have, the faster we can get that melee back. Next up for weapon options here, I would highly recommend Monte Carlo as your primary. Again, if you didn't want to use it, that's totally fine, but it's perked. Monte Carlo method. Dealing damage with this weapon reduces your melee cooldown and grants a chance to fully recharge your melee ability with each kill. So if for some reason you really don't have that Thunderclap available and you didn't get a lot of kills with it, you can always use Monte Carlo to get it back. Again, if you didn't want to use this, that's totally fine, but its other perks: fluted barrel, high caliber rounds with composite stock, then also Markov chain. This weapon gains increased damage from melee kills and kills with this weapon. Melee kills grant ammo for this weapon. So again, it pretty much comes with swashbuckler. So as long as you're getting melee kills and using this weapon, it is getting bonus damage. Now, I will say that Monte Carlo can also take advantage of anti-barrier auto rifle rounds this season, so that can help with anti-barrier champions. Now for your energy and heavy weapon, I would recommend Arc. Like I said, again, we can't take advantage of authorized mods Arc here, so any of the Arc mods that we use, like reserves, or I mean, heck, if you wanted to put on, you know, Arc Siphon up here on the helmet, you could totally do so. Anyway, the other main point of having Arc weapons here is having Shock and Awe. Again, Arc Final Blows. That means weapons and abilities, right? While you're amplified, so many bursts of lightning that damages and jolts targets. So if you're amplified, you can have Shock and Awe proc on a weapon. So if you shoot a target with a weapon, that'll jolt that target too. If you got through all that and you're still a little lost about how this build works, I'm going to try to explain it to the best of my ability. Now, in regards to how the armor mods work, pretty much we're able to get an even faster cooldown with our Thunderclap. Again, we want to collect orbs of power, whether it's us or our teammates. With us, we have Kinetic Siphon from Kinetic, rapid kills, and then heavy-handed with the melee kills. And again, if we need to get our melee back, again, we have multiple options to do that. First up, being Invigoration on the boots. We pick up Orbs of Power, it's going to give us melee energy. We use our Thruster class ability. Again, double outreach kicks in, giving us our melee ability back even faster. And then also on the class ability with Powerful Attraction, once we use that Thruster, any orbs around us are going to be tracked to us. So boom, we have our armor charges. All we have to do is pick up 2 Orbs of Power to gain our maximum of 4 armor charges. And once our melee is ready to go and we use that melee kickstart's going to kick in, giving us a big chunk of our melee back, on top of the point contact cannon braces perk giving you melee back depending on how many enemies that you kill and their rank. On top of that, they're going to become jolted as well, and while we're amplified, it's going to increase the damage of those lightning strikes, so we can pretty much wipe out a whole room of ads with just one melee. Now, in regards to everything else, obviously, you know, double hands-on the helmet. Every time we get melee kills, it's going to give us our super energy back very quickly. Again, with focusing strike, any of those melee hits that we get, we're going to get our thruster back even faster, which again, we can use on our class item, you know, powerful attraction, outreach, you know, giving us that melee back even faster and bringing orbs toward us. But in regards to the subclass, again, once we have our super ready to go, our Thunder Crash, and as long as we're amplified or weak, Thunderous Retort's going to kick in, allowing us to have an even stronger super to use with our team. Again, with amped up, while we're amplified, which is going to be all the time, we're going to gain massive damage resistance, and any arc final blows while we're amplified, whether it's with weapons or our abilities, is going to summon another burst of lightning that's going to damage and jolt those targets. Now, everything else in the class item, again, depending on what grenade you're using, you're going to be able to have that, you know, jolt, ionic traces, whatever you want to use. Your grenades are going to decimate the opponents anyway, so that's not even a big deal. With knockout, again, we're going to be able to get our health back, and it's going to make us amplified. Again, that's the initial way we're going to become amplified anyway, which we're going to be taking advantage of the melee regardless. And then lastly, just with the fragments in general, with sparkle resistance, we get to resist even more incoming damage. While we're amplified, we're going to be creating even more orbs of power. And if we get meleeed, when we're about to melee, we're going to do even more damage with spark of feedback. Again, this whole build is pretty much use the melee on some targets, and you're more than likely going to get that melee refunded almost immediately. And you're going to collect some orbs of power, gaining those armor charges, use your melee again, get the melee back, use the melee again, and you're going to have your super pretty quickly as well. Again, there's multiple ways with this build to be able to jolt and just take out a bunch of targets. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is my reprised point contact cannon brace arc Titan build. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I'm going to put the dim link for the entire build at the top of the comments. I'm going to pin it actually, so if you want to copy everything that I'm using, whether it's armor mods, you know, subclass items, and then also fashion, if you want to do that as well, that's going to be in that dim link. Let me know what you guys think. Is there anything that you would suggest, anything that you could potentially improve on? Did you like it? What did you like about it? Again, let me know in the comments. I'm 100% willing to hear you out. I'm testing stuff out in this game all the time. In any event, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, be sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and then turn that bell next to notifications so you don't miss out on another build video here on the channel. If you didn't know, we actually stream live on YouTube 3 days a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Friday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes the day changes, sometimes the time changes depending on my schedule. But if you want to stay up to date when I'm going live, again, I always post when I'm going live on Twitter at ItsDaveTV. I also post other updates there in regards to like other YouTube videos, other content that I'm doing. And if you do want to participate in raids, dungeons, PvP, all the other stuff, be sure to join my Discord. That link will be in the description. Obviously, we're talking about Destiny 2 in there, but we have other topics in there for other games, pizza tech, anime, and other stuff. Lastly, if you didn't know, we had a YouTube partner here on the channel, which is just freaking huge. It's given us access to a lot of cool things. One of those things being memberships. If you don't know what a membership is essentially like a Twitch subscription. Again, it is just another way to support me here on the channel so I can continue making these videos for you guys. Again, if you would like more information, all you have to do is press the join button next to subscribe, and that'll give you a rundown with all the details you need. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been your boy. We'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.